Hello my friends, welcome to the last episode of the Gorgeous Gourd series. Woohoo! So today I'm going to be demonstrating how you're going to finish up pumpkins 4 and pumpkins 5. So you're going to go through and complete the steps when you are prompted with the video, and at the end I will show you how to put together your final project. So let's get started. Alright, next up is the shading for this guy. So I'm going to start by adding the value for his little stripe over here. I'm going to do this section next. It's quite dark. Kind of zigs out and then zigs back. It gets really thin. The little few marks next to it. Then over here, we've got this shape. It starts out pretty skinny. And it is quite dark. So I'm filling this in almost completely varnished. So right now I'm just going through and trying to make the outside borders. And I'm still following along with my finger. And I'm trying to help this reach the outside edge of that shape that I drew. So that I know that it's growing at the right pace. So now I'm just gonna go through, use my blending stump to kind of fill that in. And I can go back in and erase those outside edges that I had just as a guide for myself. Now over here, same thing, I'm just gonna add in these little details. It's very helpful to have your finger on it. So now I'm going to go through and just erase those guidelines that I left for myself, and I'm going to start adding in the value that goes underneath this pumpkin. So I'm adding that shadow, starting to fade this out a little, and I'm going to use my blending stump to help me do the rest. So I'm adding value all the way out from here, starting at the bottom and then adding some texture and value at the same time. And we've even got a little bit of value on this side. And this is coming up and goes all the way around over here. Now I can go through and add the value for this last section, last big section anyway. So this goes almost back to the stem. We've got this value kind of coming in, and then this coming backwards. Now let's get started on the stem. So working right here, kind of comes straight back, comes down to a point, at an angle, and then it comes down to a point. Now we've got a very sharp outline of the stem up here. And then I'm just adding these highlights. And then it just sort of disappears right here. We've also got some highlights here. We've got a darker section of our stem on this half, which is just varnished black and comes out on this side. And up here, we're just going to isolate a few of these little spots. And then fill in a little bit of medium tone. And then we're gonna go through and add another dark line section on the other side of our highlight. Maybe start our highlight once it's past the top of the pumpkin. Got a little line right there. All right, so for the middle section, I'm gonna add just a light layer. Leave those little spots of white. Now I'm gonna try to shrink the size of these little highlights and only have the little white spots exactly where I see them. And there we go. The last object I'm going to show you how to draw is this gourd right here. So I'm going to start by going through and finding the darkest medium tones for each section and adding them in. So we've got this darker section in between. That kind of comes out and over this way. We've got a dark spot that's right here. Gonna add these little shapes in. And I've got a pretty solid dark shadow on this side. Another one right here. Now I can probably go through with my blending stump and start fading some of these out. So I'm gonna start by blending these out, just having some lines kind of like fading back. This is a little bit lighter and darker on this bottom part. So I'm trying to make it look like it's going back towards the center. This section has a darker edge as well. Just sort of rounding this out. And it's the lightest right here. This is darker on this side. And the darker here. And then it's going to be fairly light on this side. Now we can come through with our pencil and add in some of these details. Try to fill it in so that you don't have to come back with your blending stump and make it perfect. It'll just sort of look already blended if you're trying to fill it in all the way. I think I can probably increase the size. So I just drew in 3 little dots, and then I'm gonna add just like a faux circle, a couple little wavy spots, and I'll use my blending stump on that in a second. Now I'm gonna lead these lines back towards the center, and I notice that it's darker right here, darker right here. Along here it's darker, and that line sort of leads out. Leading lines here. So I'm just going through and trying to really focus on what direction the lines are going in and where the darker shadows are. I'm gonna come over here and add this little bit. So I'm just going through and trying to find as many details as possible to add. Now I see that this edge is quite a bit darker, and I'm just gonna add lines all sort of going back towards that space, and then I'm gonna use my blending stump to help me fill it in. Now right here, I'm kind of going straight across before it dips down. And we've got these lines kind of coming out. Now I'm just going through, and since I've kind of got the basic shape figured out, I'm adding the value and lines in between. I don't want to fill it completely in because I want to have some of that line showing to make it look like texture. And this is a very soft fading area, so I am just going to let that fade out just a tad bit on its own. I'm going to come in with my blending stump, and I'm just going to try to fill in some of those values while still having the lines show in some areas. I don't want to have an outline or border anywhere, so if there is one, that means I need to go back through and add another layer. It shouldn't look like I have outlined anything. So I'm just trying to kind of smudge this all together, especially in areas like this where it's sort of got an outline started. Now, looking back and forth, I could probably go a little bit darker in this area. I also need to go back through and shade in some of the sections of this little foot or end of this fruit. So I'm just drawing in just a very light line, and then I'm going to add just a small pencil detail. And I'm going to go back over that with my blending stump. Now looking at this, I can probably go back on this side and work on shading that in a little bit better. Can make sure that there's like a solid dark edge before it gets to the shadow that I've already colored. And there you go. Congratulations, you reached the end of the demonstration videos for this series. You still have one more drawing to complete, and you can use the demonstration videos that you've watched already to help you with this next drawing. But you have two options, a couple of choices, so you'll pick the drawing you would like to complete, and then you'll finish the drawing using the steps that you've learned throughout this series. So once you have finished your final drawing, your last step for this project is to assemble it. So here are the instructions for how to do that. Thank you for watching this series. I hope that it was helpful and that you learned a lot. When you are finished with this project, please make sure that you take your time assembling the background, putting all of your pictures on and gluing them so that they're straight and not crooked. You took so much time working on these drawings, so I don't want you to rush through the last step and make it look like you have bad craftsmanship. So please make sure you're taking the time to put it together correctly. I really enjoyed making this video series for you, and I hope that it was helpful to watch another artist's process and then to be able to follow the steps along with me. So I hope that your project turned out successfully and that you are proud of what you made, and I'm looking forward to our next series together. Thanks for watching.